Hello students, I am Sonali Kelkar from City International School, and today we are going to do the fourth part of the topic, how do organisms reproduce. So the topics that we are going to cover today, first of all we are going to take a recap and then reproduction in human beings. In that, under that topic we are going to do male reproductive system and female reproductive system. So let's start the session. So students, let's have a recap first. Now what is flower? So flower is a modified stem which functions as a reproductive organ and produces ova and or it can produce pollen. So in case of male flower, that is unisexual flower, it produces pollen, and in case of female flower, if it is unisexual, it produces ova. And we can see here this is a bisexual flower, and the example of bisexual flower is hibiscus and mustard, whereas the example of unisexual flower is papaya and watermelon flowers. Right, now coming to the structure of flower, the flower is commonly borne on a short and a long stalk, or a long stalk, that is called pedicel. So this is what is a pedicel. Let me take pencil here. Right, so this is pedicel. The swollen part is called a receptacle. It is called receptacle. It is also called thalamus, right? And then we see the green color leaves. These are sepal, and the whorl of sepal is known as calyx. Here is the whorl of sepal is known as calyx. Then a colorful part of the flower, which can be red, pink, yellow color or any other color, right? This is to attract insects for pollination. So the whorl of petal is known as corolla. So these colorful these colorful things are called petals, and the whorl of petal is called corolla. Then we can see androecium, that is the whorl of flower, and it is a male reproductive organ. Right, it's a male reproductive organ, and the whorl of male reproductive organ is called androecium. And in case of male reproductive organ, it has stamen, okay, anther and filament. You can see that anther and filament together known as stamen, right? And let's draw this. This anther is bilobed structure. It is a bilobed structure. Anther is a bilobed structure, and it is on the filament. It is present on the filament. This is the filament, and this is anther. And if we try to cut the anther, we will find then there are 4 pollen sacs present inside the anther, and inside these pollen sacs are present pollen grains. Clear? Now these pollen grains are yellow in color, and they have male gametes in it. Now gynoecium is the last whorl or the fourth whorl, right? And this consists of the female reproductive organs. You can see here stigma, the upper part of the gynoecium, right? Stigma, which is sticky, right? And it is swollen little bit and sticky where the anthers lands, and and then they germinate, right? And the elongated part is called style, and the swollen part over here, it's called ovary. Inside the ovary you will find ovules, right? You will find small ovules on either side, and these ovules has an egg cells. Each ovule will have a egg cell in it, right? Now coming to the next part. So what is fertilization? Fertilization is a process in which male and female gamete fuses together. right? And in this, the whole process of fertilization can be divided into 4 steps. The first and the foremost and very important is pollination. That is the transfer of male gametes. Okay, now these male gametes are present in pollen and which can be transferred to the stigma. Here you can see the pollen grain is transferred to the stigma with the help of wind, water, or any wildlife. They can be insects, they can be animals or human beings, right? So transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma is known as pollination. Now there can be a two type of pollination. One is the self-pollination, the other is the cross-pollination. Now, in case of self-pollination, the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower born on the same plant. The most important thing, it can be the same flower. In case of bisexual flower, most of the time it is same flower, but it can also be another flower born on the same plant. Now what is cross pollination? In cross pollination, the transfer of pollen grain from the flower of one plant to the the flower of another plant. So there are two plants which are taking part in case of cross pollination. Two plants are there and the transfer of pollen grains is from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower, which are born on the two different plants, right? After that, the most important step is germination of pollen grain on stigma and growth of pollen tube. When the stigma of a proper plant, or we can say that when the pollen grain of the same species landed on the stigma of the flower of the same species, then definitely the germination of pollen grain will start, and you can see the germination with a formation of a pollen tube, right? So many pollen grains will form pollen tube, but one of the pollen grain will form a pollen tube which will get inside the ovary, right? And in this process, what will happen? Then the penetration of the tube will be done in the ovary, and ultimately it will be in the ovule where the egg cell is present. After the penetration of the tube into the ovary and ovule, the fertilization takes place. Now what is the fertilization? It is the fusion of two dissimilar sexual reproductive units, that is gametes. What are the two dissimilar gametes? The one is the sperm cell and the other one is the egg cell, right? So they get fused together and this process is known as fertilization. We can see in this diagram there is a pollen grain over here on the stigma. It gets germinate and a tube nucleus. You can see there are 3 nucleus. One is the tube nucleus and the other two are sperm cells, right? Now the tube nucleus has a very special function, that is it forms a tube. It forms the tube, and once the formation of the tube is done and once the tube is inserted in the ovule, then this tube cell will get degenerate. Now what will happen with the other two sperm cells? So altogether there are 3 cells, the 3 nucleus which are descending down through this tube, right? The one is the tube nucleus and the other two are sperm cells, right? One of the sperm cell is going to fertilize with the egg, right? Here is the egg, the middle one. One of the sperm cell will fertilize with the egg and the other sperm cell will fertilize with the two polar nuclei, right? Because in this fertilization, In the second, fertilization, that is when the sperm cell fertilizes with the two polar nuclei, there is the involvement of the three nuclei. So we call this as triple fusion, right? And the other one where the sperm cells fertilizes with the egg, this is called syngamy. Syngamy, right? Because there are two fertilization taking place, that is the triple fusion and the syngamy. That is why this fertilization is known as double fertilization. So children, I think these things are very much clear. Now we can proceed to the next topic. Let's talk about the reproduction in human beings, right? Uh, so far we have been discussing the variety of modes that different species use for reproduction. Let us now look at the species that we are most interested in, namely humans. Humans use a sexual mode of reproduction. And how does this process work? So before we know about how the process works, we have to know about the different changes that takes place in human body. Okay, before the actual process of fertilization, how does it takes place, we should know about what are the different changes that takes place in human body. So human body has to prepare itself, it has to get sexually mature. Even the organs which are taking part in the sexual reproduction, they have to be sexually mature. Okay, so let's see how this changes and when these changes occur in human beings. And we know that human beings are involved in the sexual reproduction, so there will be the involvement of the two individuals or the two sexes, that is male and the female, right? So definitely there are different changes, different type of changes that will be taking place in male and female. Few of the changes will be common in male and female, and the few changes will definitely be different as they are different in their sex, right? So human beings reproduce by sexual method after attaining puberty. We have heard about this puberty, and you have learned about puberty in 8th grade. Now puberty, it is a stage during which the immature reproductive system in boys and girls get mature. That means this is a stage when the individual is sexually mature. When the individual is sexually mature, that means it can, or he or she can able to reproduce, but it is not the right age for reproduction, because the puberty starts in girls at almost the age of 10 to 13, and in boys it starts at the age of 11, and it can extend till age of 13, 14, right? The age differs, it depends upon individual to individual, but they can differ 3 or 4 years here and there, right? So there now this puberty is related. How you can relate this puberty? Puberty is always related with the physical changes, right? So how the physical changes are taking place in girls and in boys. Now, this adolescence we are talking about, it is a period of mental and emotional changes, because there are changes, physical changes taking place in girls and boys, as well as there are certain hormonal changes definitely taking place in girls and boys, because these all changes are ultimately controlled by the release of hormones. So these hormonal changes definitely going to affect the mental and the emotional status of an individual, right? So they experience different type of emotions, sometimes different type of simulations because of the hormonal changes in their body. So all these changes, they are the signal of the sexual maturation of body. why the sexual maturation is so important to know, because if a person doesn't attain the sexual maturation, he or she won't be able to undergo the different process of reproduction, right? The criteria of the germ cells to participate in sexual reproduction is another specialized function. Yes, because an individual is sexually mature, definitely their germ cells are prepared in their gonads, right? Now, what are gonads? That we are going to study further in later slides. But now let's know how the different changes are taking place in the two individuals, that is girls and boys. The common changes with that takes place in girls and boys, there is a shoot up in their height, right? And there are growth of hair under the armpits and in the pubic hair. You can see the pubic hair also, and girls and boys as well. Then the genital organs, they increases in sizes, especially in boys the penis get longer, right? And the bones are strengthened, they are become stronger, the muscles are also stronger, they get stronger in girls and boys as well. Genital organs size increases, the skin become darker near the genital organs. So, and then especially, how can we forget, the skin becomes oily, right? The acne and the pimple problem starts at this age, and due to this individuals gets really conscious, right? And in boys, shoulders get wider, in girls hip bones get wider, and they start gaining weight near their hips and thighs, right? And in girls, the spatial breast starts developing, and the nipple part is getting darker, that is in girls, you can see. And in boys, the voice becomes deepened, okay? In girls, the voice is, it doesn't become deepened, it becomes more high pitched voice, right? So these are the different physical changes that we can see when an individual attains its puberty, and this shows that their sexual organs are now mature enough, and they are mature enough to produce germ cells. Now, what are the germ cells? In male, the germ cells is sperm, and in female, the germ cell is ova, that is plural, and ovum singular. Now, coming to the male reproductive organs, right? Here in male reproductive system, we can divide the whole male reproductive system in two parts. That is the first one, which is very important, that is the produce of the organs which produces germ cells, right? So the organs which produces germ cells, they are known as gonads, right? And in male, the gonads are nothing but testes. The gonads are testes, and usually we call them testicles, right? These are the gonads, or the primary sexual organ in male. So a very important question can be asked, which is the primary sexual organ in male? So that is the testis, right? Now, the other organs which are also very important for the transfer of the germ cell, to deliver the germ cell in male, to transfer of the germ cell is very important, because this germ cell that is called sperm in male, and which is motile in nature, it has to transfer to the female genital organ, right? Because unless and until the sperms are transferred to the female genital organ, it won't get fused with ova or ovum and get fertilized. Now let's see the different organs of male reproductive system. The first and the very important is testis. We know that this is the primary reproductive organ reproductive, I'm just writing the short form, organ, right? It is a very important because without testes nothing can happen. So primary reproductive organs are very, very important. These are the very basic organs, right? They occur in pair. Testes occur in pair, and that is why we call testicles. They produce a sperm. Sperms are produced inside the testes, and they produce male hormone also, that is called testosterone. So very important question can be asked over here. What are the two different functions of testes? Number one, it produces a sperm, and number two, it produces male hormone, that is testosterone. Now with the secretion of testosterone, the onset of puberty is happening, right? So different physical changes that you observe in male, that is because of the production of testosterone, right? Now coming to the scrotum, it is a thin bag, right, structure, and which is extension of abdominal cavity. It is not present inside the body, it is present outside the body. And what is the function of these scrotum? They contain testes. So testes are present in this thin skinny structure called scrotum, and it is outside the body. Now why it is outside the body? Because it is from the outside the body because the temperature is almost 2 to 3 degrees below, right? Our body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, and cell cannot mature at this temperature. So to keep the testes below 2 to 3 degree from the normal body temperature, the scrotum is outside the body. It also protects testes. It maintains the temperature lower than the body temperature. Now coming to epididymis, or we also call epididymis. You can see in this diagram epididymis, right? Now this is a complex tube like structure in a scrotum. It is just like a cap on a scrotum. Inside this epididymis, you won't believe, there is a 6-meter long coiled tube. 6-meter long, right? So this is attached to the testis. It first go little the back side of the testis, and then it go down, and from the epididymis, arises vas deferens. Okay, vas deferens is also known as sperm duct, children, which is not mentioned in your textbook, but vas deferens is also known as sperm duct. Now what is the role of epididymis? It helps in the storage of sperm. The sperm gets stored in epididymis, and they get mature in epididymis. Initially the sperms were not mature, but when they are in this 6-meter long epididymis, they slowly get mature in epididymis, right? It stores sperms, help in the passage of sperm. Now vas deferens, which is also known as sperm duct in common language, right? I will write here sperm duct. Now what is the role of vas deferens? Vas deferens, as you know, it is a duct, so definitely it helps in the transfer of sperms from the testis, okay, and it goes along the testis over here. It get coiled over the bladder, ureter, and then it get joined with urethra. Okay, so vas deferens takes sperm. The function of vas deferens is to transfer sperm from testes to the urethra. Now why to the urethra? Because urethra is a common passage. In male, urethra is a common passage for urine as well as for the semen, right? Now penis, Penis is a muscular copulatory organ. You can see the penis. It is a muscular organ, highly muscular organ. It has erectile tissues at the border. It helps in the erection of penis whenever there is a sexual stimulation, right? And it discharges sperm when stimulated. Coming to the urethra, why the urethra is important, why we are learning urethra in male reproductive organs, because it is a common passage, as I have already told you. Okay, it is a common passage for both sperms and urine, or we can say semen and urine. Now urethra is a tube-like structure. It is again a tube-like structure, okay, passing through the penis. Now what is sperm? Now sperms are the tiny and motile bodies that use their long tail to move through the female reproductive tract. Okay, now this is motile gamete. Okay, now this sperm is divided into, it is divided into 3 parts. In some book they have written in 4 parts. Now let's see the parts. The first part is a head part. Okay, this head part is having a nucleus. You can see it has nucleus, right? And this is the part which will go inside the ovum. This part will go inside the ovum. It leaves the rest of the part, that is the middle part, mid part and the tail. Okay, now tail definitely helps sperm to move all the way through vagina, right? And the middle part has mitochondria. As you can see, it has mitochondria. Middle part has mitochondria. Definitely, why do they need mitochondria? It needs a lot of energy to for the movement of the sperm all through the vagina, and it goes into the oviduct, right? So for this movement it requires a lot of energy, and that is provided by mitochondria. Tail of the tail of the sperm will definitely help in the movement. Okay, and the head part is having nucleus, which is finally going to fuse with the nucleus of the ovum, right? And definitely this nucleus has n, or the haploid number of chromosome. The nucleus of egg also has haploid number of chromosomes. So after the fertilization we are retaining the diploid number of chromosomes, that is 2, and that is nothing but 46 number of chromosomes, right? Now children, let's see the accessory glands here. Let me take a pen. Right, now accessory glands, there are 3 accessory glands present in male. These are seminal vesicle, prostate glands and bulbourethral glands. Now we are going to study of these 3 glands one by one. Seminal vesicle, as you can see here, seminal vesicle, this is the first gland, seminal vesicle, prostate gland, second one, and the bulbourethral is the third gland, right? Seminal vesicle is a pair of lobulated glands located between the posterior surface. This is the posterior surface of urinary bladder, right? Now this produces a secretion. The seminal vesicle produces secretion which serves as a medium for the transportation of sperm. Otherwise the sperm movement is very sluggish in vas deferens. Sperms, when coming through the vas deferens, the movement is very sluggish, but seminal vesicle secretion, which has nourishment, and it also helps as a medium to the sperm. So these nourishment definitely increases, or it gives the energy to the sperm, and sperm really gets energized by the secretion. Okay, so the sluggish movement of the sperm, it gets it becomes better by the addition of the secretion of these active secretion, right? So that sluggish movement becomes the active movement, right? Yes, then comes the prostate gland. Now prostate gland, it pores alkaline secretion. Prostate gland, it pores alkaline secretion which neutralizes the acid in female vagina. So female vagina is basically acidic. It has an acidic secretion in it. So the alkaline secretion which is secreted by the prostate gland, it neutralizes the acidic environment of female vagina. Or if it is not neutralized, then definitely these sperms will get degenerate in that acidic medium. So it is very important to neutralize the acidic medium of or acidic environment of female vagina. Now bulbourethral glands, the secretion serves as a lubricant at the time of copulation. So this lubricant is helpful. Now coming to the formation of male gametes or the sperm in testis is known as spermatogenesis. Now what is the spermatogenesis? It is the process of formation of male gametes, and the sperm in testis is called spermatogenesis. Now as we know that sperms are haploid in nature. Now what do you mean by haploid? That means it has half the number of chromosomes. Okay, and because we are talking about the human reproductive system, so definitely half the number of human chromosome is nothing but 23. The sperm has 23 number of chromosomes, right? The seminiferous tubules, as you can see here, seminiferous tubules, these are the seminiferous tubules. There are very highly coiled tubules present in the testis. In fact, the whole testis is divided into 15 to 20 compartments, right? The whole testis is divided into 15 to 20 lobules, and in these lobules are present seminiferous tubules, and these seminiferous tubules are responsible of producing sperm, and the formation of a sperm is called spermatogenesis. So seminiferous tubules are the site for spermatogenesis, right? Testes produce male hormone or known as testosterone that we have already done. Okay, this is needed for the male secondary sexual characteristic as well as for the spermatogenesis, right? So this is the very important function of testis. Okay. Now coming to the female reproductive organs. Now in female reproductive organs, it consists of pair of ovaries. You can see a pair of ovaries. Here you can see the pair of ovaries, ovary number 1, ovary number 2, pair of ovaries. Then uterus, this is our uterus here. Cervix, here is the cervix, right? And vagina, this is vagina, right? And external genitalia. So external genitalia is nothing but vulva. I will write here vulva, right? Now let's study one by one about these organs. A pair of ovaries. As you can see, the ovaries, they are the two ovaries and they are small ovoid bodies, right? What is the shape of the ovary? They are ovoid. Okay, two ovaries are present on the right and the left side. Normally what happens, only one egg matures in each ovary every alternate month. Normally what happens, one egg mature from this ovary, one egg is mature in alternate month. If this ovary is giving rise to a mature egg in the month of January, so then the next month this ovary is going to give ovum. So in the month of February this is going to give ovum, then March, then April, this one, the second one is going to give in the month of April. So this is how alternate month this functions, right? So in alternate month every ovary give one ova or egg, ovum or egg. Clear, students? So this is a general phenomena which takes place in the female reproductive system. So these ovaries also secrete female hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone, right? So estrogen is basically responsible for secondary sexual characteristics in female, and progesterone is especially it plays very important role for receiving the embryo and for the development of the embryo. So for the development of the embryo, there are different changes takes place in uterus, and these changes which are taking place in uterus because uterus has to prepare itself for the embryo, for the implantation of the embryo. So there are different changes that takes place in uterus, that is due to the hormone called progesterone. So once the egg get fertilized, the progesterone hormones are released in excess, so that the uterus is totally prepared for the implantation of that embryo, right? Now coming to the fallopian tube. Fallopian tube, as you can see, there are two fallopian tubes, okay? They are arising from the uterus, two fallopian tubes arising from the uterus, and these fallopian tubes are about 12 centimeter long. And in this fallopian tube, you must have heard about ciliated epithelium cells, right? So ciliated epithelium cells are present in these fallopian tubes. They help to push ovum or egg into a one particular direction, right? This is a one particular direction. These are the fimbriae, which are finger-like projection, right? Once the egg is released from the ovary, right, then this egg is collected by the fimbriae, finger-like projection. It collects that egg and pushes the egg towards the ovary duct, or we can also say fallopian tube. Okay, fallopian tube. The other name of fallopian tube is ovary duct. Clear, students? And oviduct, we can say. This fallopian tubes, I have already told you, this is almost 12 centimeter long, and this has a ovidunal funnel. This is ovidunal funnel because it's the end part of this oviduct is funnel shape, so we also call as oviducal funnel. So this we have already done. Now coming to the uterus, and uterus is a hollow and it is a pear shape. As you can see here, it is pear shaped, muscular, hollow structure, right? And it is almost 7 centimeter into 5 centimeter. Length and breadth of the uterus is almost 7 centimeter to 5 centimeter, right? And what is the function of uterus? Inside the uterus, the ovum, or we can say the embryo, gets implanted inside the uterus, right? The the egg, ovum or egg, it get fertilized in the oviduct. Egg fertilized in the oviduct. The fertilization of the egg takes place in the oviduct or in a fallopian tube. Now coming to the cervix, this is the narrow part of the uterus. We can also say that the uterus is divided into two parts. The broader part, this is the broader part, and this is the narrow part, right? This is the narrow part of the uterus and this is the broader part of the uterus. The broader part is there is one more thing I want to tell over here. The lining of the uterus is known as endometrium, right? The lining of the uterus is known as endometrium, and the thinner part of the narrow part of the uterus is known as cervix. This cervix opens into vagina. And next is very important, that is vagina. So vagina is a muscular tube. It is muscular tube and it is almost 10 to 15 centimeter long, right? It is almost 10 to 15 centimeter long. Let me write it in proper way. Check. Okay, it is 10 centimeter to 15 centimeter long. It is muscular tube, and children, this is also known as the birth canal. It is also known as the birth canal. It has highly elastic muscles. So at the time of the birth of baby, these muscles get expands lot, right? It has highly elastical muscles. This vagina, now this is the part of female genital organ which receive male penis during copulation, right? As I told you, it has a great elasticity of its wall which allows the passage of baby during childbirth. Now the opening of the vagina in young female is partially closed by a thin membrane called hymen. So you don't have this, but you can say this is what is the hymen, right? And in common language it is known as virgin knot. Virgin knot. This virgin knot can rupture or breaks due to the strenuous physical exercise or due to any kind of disease, right? So this is all about female and the male reproductive organs. Now coming to the few different functions which are very important that takes place in this female reproductive organ, right? So let's see first about the ovum, which is very important. Now ovum is the female sex cell. As I've told you, it is also haploid. That means it has n number of chromosomes. That means it has 23 chromosomes, right? And this is also called, in common languages, we also call it egg cell. Ova are produced by epithelium in ovary. Inside the ovary, there is epithelium which produces ova. And now you must have heard the word ovulation. Now, what is ovulation? As you can see in this animated slide over here, you can see there is a release of ova, and the release of ova from the ovary, and this is known as ovulation, right? Actually the ova is released from the walls of ovary. This ova, okay, they inside there are many ova, and one single ovum, when it gets mature, it comes on the surface of the ovary wall and then it pops out, right? When it pops out, it is collected by the fimbriae, finger-like projection present in the oviduct or fallopian tube, and then it is pushed inside the fallopian tube due to the ciliary movement of hair. There are small, very small ciliary epithelial ciliary cells which has small ciliary fibers, or you can say ciliary cells present on it, and which helps in the pushing of the ova into the one direction, that is towards the uterus, right? And this, there is one more thing which is a peristaltic movement. You must have heard peristaltic movement in the digestive system in esophagus, but there is also a peristaltic movement taking place in the fallopian tube, which helps again in the movement of the ovum towards the uterus, right? Once the ovum get fertilized here, definitely it is going to get embedded on the walls of uterus. Now ovary gets mature by puberty. We know that. Ova are produced by germinal epithelium of ovary. That also be done. Formation of ova start in fetus even before birth. Right. The ova which are present in the ovary, they are also present when the fetus is, they are also present before the birth of fetus. That definitely it has to be the female fetus, right? So at the time of the birth, you can we can see there are 2 to 3 lakhs immature eggs present in the ovary. Okay, so at the time of the birth of a baby girl, inside the ovary there are about 2 to 3 lakh immature eggs. Now when this girl attains the puberty, okay, which is nothing but the maturation of the sexual organs or the gonads, at that time one by one these immature eggs get mature and released by the alternate ovary in a alternate month, right? So after attaining puberty, these immature eggs starts getting mature under the influence of hormones from pituitary gland. Okay, now the next point is one matured ovum is released from either ovary at every 28 days. So in every 28 days, one ovum will be released by one ovary. And this process of release is called ovulation that we have already done. Okay. So children, this is all about today's session. Practice today's topic and thank you so much.